Okay, guys, so we are going to move on to arthropods. Now, arthropods are one of the more prolific types of animals on the planet, so they have some of the basics for animal success. Some important things that arthropods have is that they have metamerism modified by tegmentization. Okay, what that means is that they have these sections of their body, and each section of their body does a different thing. They have a chitinous exoskeleton. That chitinous exoskeleton is what gives them their body shape. They have paired jointed appendages, so they have even numbers, 2, 4, 6, 8 amount of legs, and they have joints to them. They go through ecdysis. Ecdysis is another term for molting, the process of molting. They have a ventral nervous system. That means their brain and their nerve bundles run along their front, not their back, unlike us. They have a coelom, but it is just around the gonads and sometimes the excretory system. Otherwise, their body is full. It doesn't have that fluid-filled cavity. If you've ever dissected one of the large luber grasshoppers, you have noticed this, that it was filled, and then when you went to open it, it was like nonstop tissue instead of having that fluid-filled opening like you would if you dissected any kind of mammal, any coelomate. They have an open circulatory system. Remember, that means the blood will leave the vessels. And they have a complete digestive tract, which means food goes in the mouth and then out through the anus in a different spot. And they usually do metamorphosis. They change their body type. So, classification. Move this again. Arthropods are monophyletic, which means they are one branch in the phylogenetic tree. And they are part of the protostome. Again, protostome means that their mouth was formed from the blastopore, so their mouth is the first hole that was formed. And in the group, the clade Ecdysozoa is going to be the group that actually do perform molting. So ecdysozans, I'm sorry guys, they have a cuticle, they go through ecdysis, and they lose their epidermal cilia, so their skin cells don't have little cilia. There are 4 subphylums in there. There's the chelicerates, the crustaceas, the hexapodas, and the myriapods. And then there's the extinct trilobitomorpha. So there are no trilobites anymore. You can see their fossils around, but Chelicerata, Crustacea, Hexapoda, and Myriapoda are all currently around. All right, so here is a phylogenetic tree, and you can see we have the protists that weren't animals, but they started. Now here's everything that would be in the animals. You can see coming off of ecdyzoa is this one, or coming off of this one group is the ecdyzoa, and those are going to be where the insects are going to fit into. All right, so here's a table. Take time to read over this if you need to. Phylum Arthropoda, subphylum Trilobitomorpha, subphylum Chelicerata. In the subphylum Chelicerata, we have class Merostomata, class Arachnida, and class Pyconidia. So we have the subphylum Myriapodia, which includes class Diplopodia, class Chilopodia, class Pauropodia, and class Symphyla, and subphylum Crustacea, which then has their, they have the decapods, the class Decapoda, among others. So there's a breakdown of the different classifications in arthropods. Meritimism is evident externally. So we can see these different parts of their body based on just looking at them rather than opening them up. They have the segmented body walls, and they have segmental appendages. So they have these segmentisms. There's not a ton internally. You don't see septum on the inside of these insects. Instead, they just have their external segments. Most organs are not in segments. They have their tegmentization, so they are specialized for feeding. They have the area that's specialized for feeding. That's going to be their head. Sensory perception, that's also going to be in the head, and also maybe sometimes off of the appendages. For locomotion, the legs are going to be usually off of the thorax. And then the visceral functions are going to be the digestion, the reproduction, the organ functions, and that's going to happen usually in the abdomen. All right, so all arthropods have some form of exoskeleton. The exoskeleton is formed from that cuticle. It's external, it's on the outside, and they have it's a jointed skeleton. When you're thinking of the exoskeleton of insect, kind of think a suit of armor, and you know at the knees and at the joints, they have those, or at the knees and elbows, they have the joints so the exoskeleton can move with the animal, with the human. The function of the exoskeleton is to support the animal, protect it from getting hurt, preventing water loss. An animal drying out is extremely detrimental. And then it also allows for the muscles to attach to something to give it that lever so the body can actually move. Your bones will do this for an endoskeleton, but we're currently talking about exoskeleton, so it still does the same part there. It covers the body surfaces and also invaginates, which means dips in the body wall. And it is non-living, and it'll be excreted by the epidermis. So underneath the skin, the exoskeleton is the epidermis, and that is creating the exoskeleton, and then it'll harden. The outermost layer is known as the epicuticle. It's made of lipoproteins, which is going to be fatty proteins. Lipo is fat and protein is protein. It is impermeable to water because of that, the lipid part of it. It doesn't mix with water, so water's going to beat up on there. It's not going to go inside. And it's a barrier to the microorganisms and pesticides. The innermost layer is the procuticle. It's made of chitin, which is a sugar, polysaccharide. It is the outer procuticle is hardened by sclerosation and a deposition of calcium carbonate, so it gets harder. The outermost layer, that epicuticle, is not actually hard, it's waxy. And then the inner procuticle is less hardened and more flexible, and very flexible at the joints. And then there are little receptors on the exoskeleton that are for sensory reception, and those are the sensillas. So here is a picture. You have your hypodermis. This is what's producing the exoskeleton. And then you have the procuticle. The first part, the most inner part, is less hardened, more movable. And then the outer portion is hardened. And then you have the epicuticle, which is going to be that part that is waxy. All right, and here you can see how it invaginates along with the indentations of it. It'll move along with the movement of the skin of the body. And here is the muscles pulling on the leg of this fly, and allowing it to move. And you can see the jointed appendages up there too. Okay, so for an animal to grow with an exoskeleton, they have to molt. They have to go through ecdysis. So what happens is that the enzymes that come from their hypodermal glands begin digesting the procuticle. So it starts like taking, loosening up the glue that's holding it there. It starts dissolving that. Then underneath from that hypodermis, it'll start creating new, not fully formed, but new exoskeleton underneath. And then the animal pushes against the old exoskeleton and it splits, usually at the back, but it depends on the type of animal. And they crawl out and they stretch their body, and then the calcium carbonate starts to deposit in that newly formed procuticle, and it starts to harden. So the animal, right after molting, is extremely susceptible to getting any kind of harm because their exoskeleton is not hard. You can see this with like a soft-shell crab. Soft-shell crab is just a crab that is just newly molted, and so it is not fully protected at the moment. All right, so you can see the events of ecdysis here. First, here's normal, and then the hypodermis produces those enzymes and it makes this molting gel. So now this is just loosely sitting on top. It is no longer attached to. Then the new procuticle starts forming here, and it gets larger. Then the animal bursts out of it, and they stretch their new procuticle and epidermis, and then it hardens, so they have their new exoskeleton. Sorry. The hemocoel. Remember, a coelom is a body cavity. The hemocoel is where the blood goes, the body cavity the blood goes into. So the arthropod's hemocoel comes from the blastocoel, the center of the blastopore, in the embryonic development. The internal cavity, it has an open circulatory system, so the fluid, the blood-like stuff, will actually bathe over the organs and allow for oxygen and carbon dioxide and nutrients to get dissolved in and out and then be removed. It's going to exchange the nutrients, the waste, and sometimes gases. Now, gases, unlike your blood, with your closed circulatory system, arthropods don't often have the gases in their blood. It's sometimes some, but not a ton. It is not a hydrostatic compartment, so that means that it is not doing any pumping. The blood is being pumped by the heart. Metamorphosis is a radical change in the body form from an immature stage, the larva, to the adult. And the purpose of it is to reduce competition between an adult and the baby. So the larva, like a caterpillar, that's going to live on a plant, maybe on the ground. It's going to eat plants, and it's in that one area. When it turns into the adult, the butterfly, it can now fly, and it's going to get nectar instead of eating leaves, and it's going to move in the air, and it can move larger places. And so they are not competing both with what type of food they eat and the area they live in. So that's the benefit of metamorphosis. We will start with the different types of subphylums in the next video. So today we learned about what makes an arthropod important through its metamorphosis, its ecdysis, the open circulatory system, and we also learned where it fits into in its classification. So that's it for today, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.